The question often arises, usually during discussions of stateless societies, as to how one would protect itself from an invasion by a country with a government. This usually comes pre-packaged with claims as to the superiority of a state due to its centralized and tax-funded military. Of course, the first thing to note and to remember when talking about this topic is that a government military is no guarantee of successfully defending an invasion by another. Almost every invasion in history is one state invading another, obviously because most places in that history have had a government. But the point to that is that any government, if they have more advanced technology, if they have more abundant resources, if they have a vastly larger population, or even just being more strategically located, they will have a significant advantage over their opposition, and no differences in the way society functions there at the time is going to save them from being taken over. As well as this, nobody can really say for sure what type of defence a stateless society would have at any given time. By not having a central state, the market, when left to decide, would more than likely provide the most cost-effective and reliable solutions to maintain competitiveness within that market, whatever those changing solutions may be. And why would you even want to attack it anyway? An untaxed and unregulated market, free to innovate faster and at cheaper costs, would surely be a prime target for trading, not invasion. Especially when trading for the things that you need is likely going to be much cheaper than the cost of war, and certainly much better for maintaining public support. Consider also that if you did invade a stateless society, there is no infrastructure to take over, no tax system, no specific national military, no centrally managed police system. Everything would have to be built from scratch before you can even begin to recover the losses of invasion. A society that lacks the governments of others would also be, by default, neutral, a position that has most notably served the Swiss for over 200 years so far without incident. By staying out of the politics of countries, and certainly not intervening in the way nations such as the UK and the US have done, it would be hard for anyone to portray a stateless society as a direct threat. But for the sake of argument, let us say that you do find some reason to invade, whatever it may be. There is a market demand for security. If there were not, the question of it wouldn't be raised, governments wouldn't do it, and I certainly wouldn't be talking about it right now. There are a few more obvious ways in which the market could meet this demand, most prominently through competing private security firms giving individuals the opportunity to either subscribe or pay as and when for protection of their property, and perhaps there would even be charity-based options too. How well armed and how numerous these firms are would most likely be a mystery to any invader. After all, why reveal that information if you're trying to compete in a market when it will be evidently detrimental? Defeat also of one of these firms would not mean defeat of the others. All the hypothetical eggs are not in the same basket. As to what kind of security will be provided by these firms, a few of them developing nuclear deterrence may be more cost-effective than maintaining a standing army, and it could be argued the most reliable defence currently. Very few would ignore the threat of mutually assured destruction. There's also the issue of the gun behind every blade of grass. Lacking in the restrictions on property ownership that governments implement, it would be easy to assume that there would be many weapons in the hands of individuals, and certainly more advanced ones than most governments allow today. This alone would ensure massive casualties for any invader, even if eventually successful. And if we were to assume that the stateless society started on a level footing with its surrounding governments, without the market restrictions that those governments put in place, new technology and innovation to maintain competitiveness would move along much quicker, and without the taxes on the sales of such things, comparatively cheaper too. A stateless society would likely outdevelop any potential invaders, given adequate time to do so. It would be in the interests of people to protect their freedom from imposition by a state. It would be in the interests of business owners to protect the market that allows them success. And it would definitely be in the interests of the security firms, whose industry would be entirely destroyed by any successful invader. There would be no lack of people ready to fight. So when faced with an unknown number of enemies, armed with an unknown level of technology and amount of it, including potentially nuclear arms and a population that, if like any other, would be ready to defend their freedom, why on earth would you consider it a prime target for invasion? And no, I have no doubt that a stateless society would be invadable, especially if it were a stateless society in the Third World being targeted by, say, a modern Western government. But beyond initial disparities, I do not see any reason to believe that it will be any more of a target than a state with a government, and perhaps even less of one.